Today is Christmas Eve, and in the spirit of Christmas, we're going to be talking about yet another match made in heaven project by one Guillermo Del Toro that once again never got off the ground. And what does this have to do with Christmas, you might be wondering? Well, not really much, except for the fact that this movie would have been about Charles Dickens, the man behind possibly the most famous Christmas story of all, A Christmas Carol. Yes, back in the early 2010s, Guillermo Del Toro nearly directed an adaptation of the critically acclaimed historical thriller about Charles Dickens called Drood. So, what if it happened? Drood was a historical thriller written by Dan Simmons and published in early 2009. The book details a fictionalized retelling of acclaimed Victorian author Charles Dickens during his last 5 years alive. The title of the book derives from The Mystery of Edwin Drood, which was the last book that Dickens ever worked on, but sadly passed away before he could finish. The book, however, is actually not from Dickens' point of view, but rather that of his best friend and fellow author, Wilkie Collins. The book explores the way that Dickens became obsessed with the Gothic and the occult during his final years. And this would all begin with Dickens nearly being killed in the Staplehurst rail crash of 1865, which resulted in 7 carriages plummeting off a bridge, with Dickens being in the only first-class carriage to not fall off. And this incident would traumatize Dickens, and seriously affect his mental health during his remaining years. Guillermo Del Toro was approached by Universal Studios to direct an adaptation of Drood in 2010, which was confirmed by Del Toro himself. Suffice it to say that Del Toro was likely very interested in this project, considering that he holds a great amount of respect for old writers, such as Mary Shelley, and had wanted to do a period piece set in Victorian England for a very long time. If I were to guess, Del Toro would have shown a lot of care and respect to Charles Dickens, and would have helped to remind people of all the great literature that Dickens gave to the world, besides just A Christmas Carol. This movie could have given more humanity to Dickens as a human being, who's been traumatized by a near-death experience, and holds a genuine fear of his books being lost to history and forgotten about. Now, it's important to note that this movie was never officially cancelled. Universal still has this movie listed as in active development, which means there's still a chance that it could still happen. But honestly, I don't think that it will personally. The Man Who Invented Christmas, which has a somewhat similar plot about Charles Dickens' life, didn't make a lot of money at the box office, which sadly might show that the interest in a Charles Dickens biopic might not be there. Plus, there's the fact that Del Toro seems to be staying at Netflix, so Universal may either hire a new director or cancel the project entirely, despite Del Toro claiming to have the script already finished. So what do I think of a Drood movie directed by Guillermo Del Toro? Honestly, just like most of Guillermo Del Toro's other canceled projects, this one honestly sounds very promising to me. As I said before, I think that Guillermo Del Toro would show a lot of care and respect to Charles Dickens. Well, I don't think he's ever outright talked about Dickens. I imagine he's definitely an author that he respects, because he is a huge fan of old Gothic literature. So I imagine that he probably holds Charles Dickens in a similar vein to Mary Shelley. So I imagine that he would treat this project with a lot of care and respect. But I also imagine he would be willing to go to darker places than most other directors would when it comes to biopics. I imagine that he would not shy away from some of the more frightening imagery, and I imagine that he would want to delve really deep into the, troubles that Dickens was going through. So I do think that this movie ultimately would have been really good. I think that Charles Dickens is definitely a man deserving of a biopic, whether the interest is there or not, and I think that Guillermo Del Toro would definitely be a good choice for that. While I don't necessarily think he should be everybody's first choice as far as telling his entire life story is concerned, but I do think that during his twilight years, during this uncertain time in his life where he wasn't sure if he was going to be dying or not, and was writing the book that he didn't finish, that would be an interesting story to see a guy like Guillermo del Toro cover, an author in his final years. I think that would be something really interesting to see a guy like Guillermo del Toro work on. And now, as far as who would actually play Dickens, it's hard to say if I think this would be good if I don't know who's going to play Charles Dickens. I'm sure Doug Jones would have been in this movie, but I don't think Ron Perlman would have been. Just because Ron Perlman is, no offense, extremely American. But Doug Jones, I could imagine having a part in this movie. I don't think he would play Dickens himself. I think he's a little too skinny, in my opinion. But I do imagine he would have some kind of part to play in the movie. Perhaps as Wilkie Collins, I'm not sure. But either way, you can add this to the long list of Guillermo Del Toro projects I honestly wish that we could have seen. I think that a Guillermo Del Toro movie set in the haunting streets of Victorian England, starring Charles Dickens in his final years and kind of being haunted by his own stories, that would have been a really, really good story to see unfold. And it's a genuine travesty this movie didn't happen, in my opinion. Now, either way, guys, have an amazing Christmas, and I'm very glad if any of you decide to spend your Christmas Eve watching this video. I really, really do appreciate the support. I hope you have an amazing Christmas Eve with all of your families and have an even better Christmas tomorrow. So, Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night. Please remember to follow me on Instagram, Rinzler_Productions. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up, share it with all of your friends on all your various social media platforms, and give me more what if recommendations in the comments down below. And I'll see all of you in the next video.